was correct. I hope I was just live streaming, because I hit the live stream thing and it wasn't didn't come up on my OBS, so I just hit that again. So I'll start from the beginning. I put out a video last week about heat pumps, and actually maybe it was earlier this week, and it was based on information I had, based on personal information or personal experience, where I had service people come to my house when my heat pump wasn't working efficiently in the wintertime. And I had actually 3 service calls over the past 2.5 years for different reasons. And the information they told me was that heat pumps don't work under 4 degrees Celsius, and which I was quite shocked at. But apparently that was my class of heat pumps. I just found out because a lot of people were a little bit annoyed at me for that heat pump comment, or that heat pump video. They weren't really too impressed because they have heat pumps and they work. I have a air-to-air heat pump, which apparently is fairly common out in British Columbia. Apparently there are other types, air to ground or ground to air, which I thought was called something else. I know that there were geothermal type systems. Wasn't aware that they were also called heat pumps, but now I'm aware. And apparently they are a lot better. And apparently you can get really expensive units called Arctic heat pumps made by Mitsubishi or somebody that can work in cooler weather or colder weather. But we don't have a whole lot of them apparently out in British Columbia, because apparently we don't need them. So I just wanted to clarify that. I know some people were actually getting quite peeved at me and weren't very polite in the comments, but most people were, so that's all cool. So the few things I wanted to talk about tonight, the first thing up, of course, was the Liberal Revolt. Apparently 30 to 40 Liberals have signed a document that will compel them to, to stick to the plan of not supporting Justin Trudeau. I don't know how that's going to work. I don't know if that's if it's going to cause any sort of backlash on them. But yesterday in the House, they yesterday in the House, they had a pretty lively discussion, but most Wednesdays are. And of course, the first kind of topic of discussion was Pierre Poilievre was mentioning that during the caucus meeting, they weren't allowed to speak up, and about half of them, so he said about half, so 24, snuck off to the bathroom and were tweeting people, or not tweeting people, but texting people in either the media or actually in the Conservative Party. So that, of course, there was a quite lively debate about that back and forth. I put out a video that I made the video yesterday and it came out this morning. And of course, I always do this. I always make the mistake of referring to question period as, oh, it happened in question period today. But of course, I don't post it till the next day. So yeah, I gotta remember not to do that. But there was a lot, but apparently they're actually asking for advice from Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party, and they're also going behind the Prime Minister's back right to the media, which is very, very interesting. How much of that is accurate I don't know. It all came up in question period. They're, you know, they're actually allowed to say anything they want in question period as long as it's parliamentary language. We'll get to a little bit of that later, which I thought was quite stupid today. But anyway, how much of that was true? I don't know. It was brought up in the comments from my video. Is this all a setup? Is Justin setting this up? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think he would. He's too much of a narcissist. Why would he? And he's not intelligent enough to find a devious way of using that to his advantage. So I don't think it's a setup by him. I think that there are a lot of people in the party who are just upset with him, just have lost all faith in him, as they should, because he just has never been a really good prime minister. So I would say that he is in a little bit of hot water. But his reaction when he came into question period, actually, as soon as he came out of the caucus meeting, he was so smug. He had that big, I want to say the common phrase for it, so I'll just say the feces feasting grin on his face. He just was it was just so slimy and disgusting. And then he stands up in question period, reaction to the first question of the day, and he just stands there and takes in all of this applause from his ministers, so not the people who were revolting against him. And of course, those people too probably stood up in the back and went along with the applause, and it went on a lot longer than it would normally. And just seeing that slimy smirk on his face was just, he did something. He maybe just totally crushed the resistance. I know that some people have commented, no, he didn't crush the resistance. It's still going on. And it may be going on, but he felt he did. I'm pretty sure he felt he crushed it. But what can happen? Like, can Pierre capitalize on this? I'm not sure. I would say that it's possible. I would say that he could possibly convince them to cross the floor and sit as independents. He doesn't like people who cross the floor. He doesn't like to invite people who cross the floor into the Conservative Party. And I think that's good thinking on the most part. Like 90% of the people who would cross the floor probably shouldn't be invited into a particular party because you know that they're just not that loyal. But it really would depend on the situation. Are they leaving for moral reasons, or are they leaving just because they're jumping off of the rats jumping off of the sinking ship? He suggested yesterday that it was because they weren't going to be getting reelected, and that's why they were jumping ship. So clearly you don't want people like that in your party. You want people who are coming into your party who are there for a moral reason, like they actually believe in what you are presenting. So I don't think he should invite them into his party, but if they cross the floor and sit as independents, then that could really work in Pierre's favor, especially if there's a non-confidence vote. The other thing that could possibly happen, I don't know if it's been discussed and I don't know what the procedures would be, but could they, like the 50 of them, if half of them were in the bathroom, so 24, so that would mean that there are 48 possibly who have signed this letter, or maybe it's just 24 who've signed the letter. I don't know. But could they possibly start their own party? I'm not sure if that's even possible during a parliamentary setting. Maybe if somebody knows down, and can put something in the comments or in the chat, is it possible to start a political party during a session, or do you have to start it prior to a session? That would be an interesting thing. But if they sat as independents, then they could vote the way they wanted to. So could Pierre capitalize on this? I think he could, but time will tell. If that many people are upset with Trudeau, I don't think that they would vote against him if they stay in the party, though. They're going to have to leave. They're going to have to cross the floor and sit as independents. Will the Bloc and the NDP capitalize on this? Now, I think if there's any who are leaving from Quebec, I think the Bloc would probably invite them into the party. And I think that any of them leaving from any other province, I think the NDP would probably invite them in because they need all the support they can get. And if they're very progressive, I don't like using that word because I don't think that they're progressive. I think they're actually regressive. The Liberal Party, in my mind, is a regressive party. They keep on going back to old, failed philosophies, like essentially communism. So I know that's probably pretty harsh and you don't want to use the term communism, but they're getting so far left. I'm not sure how else to really describe them. I mean, they're far left socialists for sure. And they're really moving in on the whole communist philosophy of taking over everything, every aspect of your life. And so could they capitalize on it? Could the NDP and the Bloc? They absolutely could. But would they, is the question. The Bloc, they have this non-confidence threat coming up. And that, this is where those dissenters and, defectors could play a really big role. And again, I don't see them doing anything if they stay in the Liberal Party. They would have to cross the floor first. That's my opinion. That's my belief on it. I don't think that they would vote against the Prime Minister because they would essentially be kicked out of caucus. And so that the end result would be the same. Does it make a non-confidence vote more likely? That's another question. I don't think that anything would either create the opportunity for a non-confidence vote other than what we have in front of Parliament at this present time. So the Bloc is the one threatening the non-confidence vote. The only way that'll work is if they get the NDP on board. But if they get the independents on board and there's another 24 independents, then we can see something really happen there. So maybe we will see the non-confidence vote being successful. I don't know. So that's what I had to talk about that. The next thing I want to talk about was India. I did a video earlier on this week about the row that the Liberals are having with the Indian government, and it actually, I think 60% of the viewers from that were actually from India. They don't really like Trudeau over there, so join the club. It was the timing of that announcement. I said it in my video, I'll say it again, highly suspicious. I know that other people on the internet, other former RCMP members, have commented differently. They said that it was necessary, but I don't know, what did it accomplish? Did it accomplish what the RCMP commissioner said it would accomplish? Was it necessary for public safety to release that information? And my belief is it really wasn't. It was too vague to really accomplish that. They said they believed that the Indian government was complicit in these threats, in these murders, and the extortions, and all the other kind of stuff. But they didn't specify who, and they didn't specify how that was going to harm everyday Canadians. And the other thing that they mentioned was that they've already conducted duty to warns. And a duty to warn is essentially, depending on where you are, but it's usually conducted by general duty. So some unit would come up with a reason to perform a duty to warn, and then they'd pass it on. So general duty constables would show up at a person's door. Sometimes it would be specialized units who would do that, like GIS or even the unit that produced the intelligence. And they would knock on the door and tell the person, look, there's a threat to your life. And they would give as much information as they could for that person to mitigate that threat. But the thing is, those have already been done in this case. So where is the public? Where is the threat to the public? Yes, I know that sometimes people get, people get caught up because, there is collateral damage sometimes. But the thing is, what are you going to do? Are you going to now avoid all places where there's Indians, in the area? That's just racist. You're not going to do that. You're not going to just see somebody on the street and say, oh, they belong to a certain ethnic group, and I'm just going to leave because there could be a public safety threat. It just served no purpose. It just absolutely served no purpose. And because it was so vague, that was another reason. If they had pictures, photographs of people who were suspects, who could pose a threat, that would be different. All of the duty to warns and all of the things that I was involved with, thank you very much, Brad, for that. Ed Broadbent would be so proud. Everything that I have seen on releasing of warnings to the public have been very specific. It's been about a certain person. So you've released somebody from a secure institution and you've told the public, look, this person presents a threat. This person is a dangerous offender. This is what they have done in the past. They are now in this community and you need to be careful. Or we're looking for this person. He hasn't yet been arrested. Charges are pending, but we believe we have strong information to believe, or strong reason to believe, that this person is a violent offender. So be careful. That's what I've seen in the past. I have never seen anything so vague as what came out of the Thanksgiving press release. It was just way too vague. There didn't seem to be a purpose for it. And if there was, because of the vagueness, why couldn't they have waited till business day? That's the other thing. The timing was really so suspicious. Because it was so vague, they could have waited a day. And when I watched the initial announcement. Actually, I watched that after the question portion of it. But it was so strange because it was almost all, with the exception of a very few, it was almost all Zoom. Like they were calling it in. The reporters had entered the meeting via Zoom. So you can tell that really isn't much of a, and they even asked, well, why are we doing it? Why are we doing this today? So in my view, that's why it was so it was suspicious. And then you go, it's crazy. Like you go on the Indian news sites, which are kind of hilarious. Like they get really worked up and they just totally hate Trudeau. There are some who are saying things that I'm not going to repeat because I can't back them up, but I do believe that a lot of them are true. And they've been reported on other podcasts. The Pleb did, and the Pleb, Mr. Sunshine Baby, and others have reported on this. I think also Moose on the Loose, who've talked about what the Indians are saying about Justin Trudeau. They've even made fun of the fact that he showed up and pretended to be a Bollywood star, and they were not impressed about that either. So his antics, the ones that we were so embarrassed about during all these years, they took offense to as well. So we're not alone there. He's a joke throughout the world. So yeah, if you get a chance, actually tune in on some of those, watch some of those Indian broadcasts. They can be quite hilarious in their comments about Trudeau, but they're also very realistic. And a lot of the comments that I received on that video was very realistic because they see him as a bit of a buffoon. We're supposed to have systems that protect Canadians, and yet we have people, and in this last couple of years under Trudeau, we've had terrorists come in and then become Canadians. And then Trudeau, and he has said this in the past, I think I put this out on another video as well, that he doesn't think that we should extradite terrorists who are Canadians, that we should keep them in the country, and that bad behavior shouldn't be caused to withdraw citizenship. I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all. If you're not born here, or if you're born here but you have another citizenship, and it comes to light that you're a terrorist, no, you don't belong here. You're putting Canadians at risk, and that's what Trudeau did when he allowed Niger into the country. And yes, I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong, but so be it. He put Canadians at risk. So the Khalistan movement, and there's another name for it too. I'm not really clear on the other name, but I do know that that was the movement that was involved in the 1985 Air India bombings. There were two bombs. One, I believe it took down the Air India plane just off of the Irish coast, and the other one blew up at Tokyo International Airport. I think it was Narita, and killed some baggage handlers. So this guy was associated to that. This guy was associated to the Air India bombing crew. And then less than a year later, there was an attack on Vancouver Island here, up near, I think it was near Gold River, but I could be wrong about that, where an Indian minister who was in a limousine of some kind or a vehicle of some kind, he was ambushed by a couple of terrorists who were armed with, I believe it was AK-47s, which are illegal in Canada. And they shot up the vehicle. He played possum, played dead, got out of that alive after his attackers thought that they had killed him. Then he returned to India, and lo and behold, he was murdered later in India by these same people. So the fact that Trudeau even let these people in to begin with, who were associated to these terrorists, the fact that we know who a lot of these terrorists are, the fact that India has given us at least 27 dossiers, and I've heard tell that it may even have been more, but 27 dossiers on 27 people that they believe are terrorists, and they want them back for prosecution, and they haven't been extradited. That to me just stinks. I think it's all political, and they're playing politics with our lives because these people are terrorists. There was one guy who showed up on, or who did an interview with Vasi Capella the other night, and I didn't actually record it, but he's saying that on the anniversary of the Air India bombings, this coming June, or maybe even as early as November, so in a month, he plans on that there may be another attack on Air India. So this guy's going on television. He's Canadian and an American citizen, and he's going on television making these threats. You know, why isn't anything done about that? Why isn't he in custody? Why aren't we packing him up and sending him back to India to face charges? It's just ridiculous that we have such a lame criminal justice system. When I was in the force, I talked about how lame our criminal justice system was all the time, how people would never get a decent sentence for even some pretty serious violent crimes. But now we have even terrorists who we're not putting in jail and we're not shipping back. It's not like we have to keep them here. A lot of them have dual citizenship. A lot of them had citizenship in another country prior to coming to Canada. And really they violated the process of getting Canadian citizenship, by not, I don't know, by lying about their connection to these groups. So I say kick them out because they are basically threatening Canadians. Last thing I want to talk about on this is going back to the Air India attack. I may be wrong about this, but to my knowledge, only one person was ever convicted of that, which is pretty lame. And I believe it was the bomb maker or somebody who they thought might have been the bomb maker. And it was not a direct a conviction. It was conviction for something kind of associated to it. To my knowledge, I could be wrong about that. But he didn't get life. He should have gotten over 300 plus life sentences to be served consecutively. But of course, this is Canada, and we never do that, which is ridiculous. So I don't know if he's still alive, but he served his time. I know he got out of jail. That is just a threat to all of Canada. Anybody who's willing to be a party to that type of an offense, over 300 people were murdered. The biggest mass murder event in Canadian history, I believe. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that I'm not. And he didn't serve all of his life behind bars. He didn't die behind bars. He wasn't even convicted of the actual murders. So pretty lame system of justice, I would say. All right, so I think I've beaten that horse to death. All right, so the last thing I wanted to talk about, and I'm probably going to stay and talk about more stuff just afterwards, when I read the comments. So put anything down in the comments you want to talk about. More than happy to do that afterwards. But the last thing I wanted to talk about is it's subject of a video that I'm putting out for tomorrow morning. I've already loaded it up and scheduled it. And that's because I normally only like to do one video a day because of the algorithm. If I put out more than one video, it tends to shut down the views on the previous video. So this one's coming out tomorrow. And it's basically what happened in question period today. it has a lot to do with, well, two topics mainly, but I'm going to talk mainly just about the one topic, which I am quite passionate about. And that is all these lies about firearms and what the Liberals are trotting out. So essentially what happened is Raquel, I think her name is Danko, brought up the increase of violence and how the handgun ban isn't working. So Dominic LeBlanc pivoted right away from handguns to assault rifles. Now, I don't know if you know this, but a lot of people don't know this, but AR does not stand for assault rifle. It stands for Armalite rifle, because that was the company that made the AR-15. And a lot of people think that it stands for assault rifle. It is not an assault rifle. An assault rifle is designed to be discharged in fully automatic or in select fire mode. So you can either switch to semi-automatic to fully automatic, or it's going to discharge in fully automatic all the time. And the AR-15 is not designed that way. There are some modifications that some people make, hopefully not in Canada, but in the US, and that people are able to make that can turn it into a select fire rifle, but it is not designed that way. So it is not a weapon of war. The military do not use AR-15s. They use firearms that are similar on the M4 platform. So, and actually the only firearm that had the designated, that had technically had, was called an assault rifle was, and I know I'm pronouncing this wrong because I'm not German, but it was the Sturmgewehr STG-44 that was used by the Germans in World War II. And Sturmgewehr means actually storm rifle or assault rifle. That was the only rifle in history that ever had the name assault rifle in its name. So they're claiming that these rifles are weapons of war or military grade weapons, and they're actually not. They are sporting rifles. I was using, before they were banned, I was in a sporting competition out in British Columbia here, where we would use AR-15s and pistols. So it's really not true that the AR-15 is an assault rifle. And as Thomas Gordon has just said, yes, they were banned in the 1970s. I believe it was 77. I could be wrong about the exact date, but they were banned in the 1970s. And I've done videos on this as well. So I'd like to, it just shows, how the Liberals will twist pretty much anything to for their own political gains, because it has nothing to do with public safety. The handgun ban has nothing to do with public safety. The people who are using handguns and rifles and the illegal firearms that are brought into the country illegally are the criminals. So I think it was either Dominic LeBlanc or it was I can't pronounce his name right now. Take a drink of water. But it was the Attorney General, Minister of Justice. He said that they wanted to get these rifles off the street by taking them away from law-abiding citizens. Well, that doesn't get them off the street because they're not on the street. They're locked up in a safe, in a designated storage room or a cabinet or something inside the residence. They're only taken out and transported under lock and key to a certified range and used there. So they're not on the street. So it's just complete BS. They're just using it for political means. I encourage you to watch that video tomorrow morning. In that video, in the description of that video, there's links to a whole bunch of other videos that I made around this general topic. And there's a lot of really good information, if I do say so myself. One in particular basically debunks all of the liberal talking points on this issue. And I did it with information from the Canadian government. You can find this information, and I've linked all of that in the description of those other videos. So check those out if you want any more information on that. All of that is really BS. One thing that I don't know if I linked in that, but there's something that y'all can look up if you're interested, and that is a CDC report that was commissioned by Barack Obama when he was president. And basically he wanted to use a study that he commissioned the CDC to do for him to be able to ban firearms in the United States. Only problem was it didn't show what he wanted it to show. It actually showed that between 500,000 and 3 million uses of firearms for self-defense, in a defensive use, occur in the United States every year. I don't know how many of those were police-related and how many were civilian-related, but there are a lot that are civilian-related. We just don't hear about them because they're not newsworthy. They don't make the news because they prevent mass shootings, and this has been shown in a lot of different cases. So I'll just relate a little story here from my own past. As you all know, most of you know, I'm a retired police officer, but while I was on the force, but I was off duty. I was traveling from Alberta. I was posted in Alberta at the time. I was coming back to BC to visit family, and I planned on going to a range out in BC. So I got all the paperwork done, and I brought my my only handgun at the time, my 45, with me, locked up, trigger lock, in a locked case, separate from the ammo, the whole bit, right? And I had all the documents. No problem on the way out, but on the way back, I was traveling in the middle of the night, and it was on the Highway of Tears up near Blue River, and this car, nobody else on the highway. I had this old beat up pickup truck. It was a piece of junk, I know, but it was a great truck because it had only cost me $700. I put $700 worth of repairs in it, and I sold it for $700 a few years later. So it didn't really cost me all that much. So but I'm driving down the road, and this vehicle comes up right behind me and was right on my bumper. Thinking, why aren't you passing? There's no other vehicles on the road, middle of the night. Used to always drive in the middle of the night. So it was for a couple of kilometers. They were right behind me. So there's a pullout. I decided, well, I'm just going to pull off to the side of the road and let this fool pass. But he didn't pass. He came in right behind me and put his high beams on. Right then, I knew what was going to happen. I knew I couldn't outrun him because I had this crappy old pickup truck. I knew I was about to get robbed. And again, I'm off duty. I didn't walk into a dangerous situation. This situation came upon me. So my suspicion was I was going to get robbed. I should qualify that with, I don't know what the intention was, but I believe I was going to get robbed or worse. So I slid my seat forward. It was one of these bench seat standard cabs. I brought my gun case up over the back of the seat and started struggling to get the lock undone. I now have better locking cases, so I would be able to get it out quicker. But before I got the chance to get the gun out, the person behind me realized what was happening and they took off because they didn't want to deal with somebody who was armed. That's actually the most common situation of somebody using a firearm for self-defense. It's not that the gun was actually produced or drawn or pointed at somebody or discharged. It's that the presence of the gun has, they've shown in this CDC study, has diffused situations. So for somebody to say, well, you know, that would never happen in Canada, there's a lot of times throughout a lot of people's lives when they're probably in a situation where, you know, they might have wished that they had access to a firearm for their own defense. Okay. So just for clarification, I didn't even get the gun out. I didn't threaten anybody with it. I didn't use it. It was still in the case when the guy took off. So it's just one of those situations where the Liberal Party and a lot of Canadians have this false idea that guns are evil. Guns are not evil. They are an inanimate object. It's the person behind the gun that's the issue. So if you, and we've already resolved that problem for the most part in Canada. How we resolved it is we've created a licensing system. And I actually believe that the licensing system in Canada works. It's everything else I don't necessarily agree with. So this crap about taking away firearms from law-abiding citizens, these aren't the people committing the crimes, and they're keeping their firearms locked up. With 85% of all the firearms that are seized coming from the United States being smuggled in, that means only 15% are coming from other sources. And a lot of those are coming from other countries other than the United States, or they're as a result of they're being stolen, or maybe they're being lost by the RCMP. There's check out one of my videos from a couple of weeks ago where it was discovered the RCMP had lost over 205 guns in 4 years, which is crazy, you know, just insane. And I don't know, somebody commented on one of my videos that I seem to be very anti-RCMP, and I'm not really anti-RCMP. It's that I'm disappointed in a lot of things that my old agency has done, and I'm very disappointed and somewhat anti-officers who are getting up into the really high ranks because they're bringing down the RCMP and causing a lot of the problems. And the members on the street, they get painted with that brush. So when the commissioner does something very political, or when there's not enough support for the RCMP, not enough funding, everybody gets painted with that brush. I know a lot of people think that we should disband the RCMP. I'm not, I actually, you know, even though I will click, you know, that I've read the comment and responded to that comment, I don't actually believe that that would solve the problem, because in the end, the same officers would just transfer over to the new police force, so it wouldn't work. What we need is that we need an overhaul. I do also believe that to a certain extent that we should probably go with provincial police forces as far as the contracts go as well. But anyway, that's another story altogether. Related to this gun issue, I'll just bring it up kind of to round things off tonight, is you know that the Liberals are starting to ramp up their election rhetoric when they start bringing up the issue of abortion, and you know that because they want to get a certain type of people on board with them. I know that I am absolutely positive that Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives are not going to make abortion an issue in the next election. So why are the Liberals bringing it up? They bring it up so that they can cause a division in the population, so that they can get people, they probably believe that more than half of the population, maybe 75% of the women out there probably agree with their position. That's why they're bringing it up. It has nothing to do with reality. The Conservatives are not going to revisit this issue. What I think is very disturbing with their with how they bring it up is they call people who simply believe different than they do, they call them radicals, far right radicals. They say they're going to a radical right-wing church in Florida. Most churches, to my knowledge, are against abortions. It's a religious thing. So they're attacking religion as opposed to attacking the Conservatives. So I don't know. It's to me, it just seems like they're ramping up their election rhetoric. That's all it is. That's what the gun thing is. If they really believed in their gun policies, it wouldn't have taken this long. They would have already gone with the illegal theft of very many of my firearms that are legally stored and safely stored. They would have already gone ahead with the illegal, in my mind, the unconstitutional theft of these guns. But they didn't. And they didn't because it's a political issue and they wanted to use it for this election. And if they don't want to use it for this election, what they're doing is, if they truly want to get rid of those guns, which I believe is maybe part of it, then you really have to wonder why. Because it's only ever been very destructive governments in history that have tried to disarm their population, and nothing good has ever come with it. And there's an old saying, if the government says you don't need a gun, you need a gun. What would Europe look like today if the French resistance didn't have firearms back in the Second World War? Think about that. Think about think about the fact that Justin Trudeau, at the start of the Ukrainian conflict, was sending firearms, these same types of firearms, to Ukraine, not necessarily to the military, but for civilian use. Okay, taking them away from us, or wants to take them away from us, but willing to give them to other civilians on the other side of the world who don't have our training in safety and don't necessarily have the same beliefs that we have around the safe use and ethical use of firearms. So when you think about that, you really have to consider what their real agenda is, and it's not good. It's not good. The political part of it, that's obvious, but if it goes beyond the political part of it, then it really is evil. Okay, they are not protecting anybody by taking firearms away from me or from anybody else who is licensed. That's just the fact. Today it was brought up that one of the arguments is that firearms in a household increases the possibility of it being used in a domestic dispute, and that women are harmed disproportionately in those domestic disputes by firearms. With illegal firearms, possibly. With people who shouldn't have firearms, possibly. But I can tell you, in 34 years, I've been to a ton of domestics. Every year, a ton of domestics. I've seized firearms that were in the residence. Some of them were illegal. Some of them were legal. And in actual fact, I didn't actually come across a case where somebody had used a firearm in a domestic dispute. And I went to tons of them. I've been to some where they've used knives, and I know of other cases where people have been stabbed to death in domestics, and also clubbed, smashed in the head with different objects and stuff like that. I've been around, and yes, firearms are used in domestics at times, but it's not like it's an epidemic like the Liberals are trying to portray it as being. And if the firearm is legal today, in today's day and age, if the person has a license and it was a legally purchased firearm, very, very, very rare. It just doesn't happen. So, they're absolutely lying on that account. So, I'm just going to go through the chat here, see if I missed anything or if anybody wants to talk about anything. So Edmonton, Alberta, Kelman, checking in from there. Welcome. I used to live Northern Alberta. I actually did live in Edmonton at one time when I was a kid too, but I served in Northern Alberta for a while and would go to Edmonton sometimes on my days off. Quite a bit, actually, have friends there. Brad, Liberals are revolting. Yeah, that's the way. Yeah, one way of looking at it. Pure Blood from Calgary, welcome. Norm from Victoria, welcome. Just down the road from me in Victoria. I'm about 45 minutes drive from at least the edge of Victoria. So hey, if you want to take the Canadian Firearms Safety course and you're in Victoria, you can come here. It's not that big of a drive. Savvy Golden, listening from New Brunswick. I was born in New Brunswick. I lost my birth certificate, so I can't prove it, but I've ordered a new one. But yeah, I grew up in the West, though. I'm a BCer. I grew up in BC. Brad from Surrey, lived in Surrey, worked in Surrey. Tracy from Nanaimo. I've seen your name up here before, Tracy. Welcome. And I go to Nanaimo quite a bit. In fact, whenever I take a ferry, I take the Duke Point ferry. I was in Nanaimo getting some watches actually engraved. I'm making these watches. I don't know if I have them here, but I've started this thing making watches, and that's not it. But I went to Nanaimo a week ago or so, and I got these watch backs engraved because for my family for Christmas. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but it's I'm going to be this one's for my wife. I don't know if you can focus in on that, but I've engraved these and or got them engraved in Nanaimo, and I'm going to be putting these watches together. There's a whole I didn't even know that you could do this until a couple of months ago, and I made one for myself. It's kind of a similar to a Rolex Explorer. But it's not a fake Rolex or anything. It doesn't have any of those fake things on it. So yeah, I go to Nanaimo all the time. Let's see. Canadians, where are the following bills? 293, C63, S210. I'll look up. I know I'm familiar with a lot of those bills, and I'll look them up just to be clear on them, and maybe talk about them next week. Yeah, Tracy says, yeah, they're voting for their government jobs. Cryptomania, is that how you're saying it? Hi from Victoria, hello. Yeah, Norm says that smirky, smug look was someone who silently farted. Yeah, looked like that. Nancy, yeah, I didn't catch where you're coming in from, but yeah, they are all weak. So-called 24 should abstain during the next confidence vote or even vote against. Yeah, so we talked about that. I think if they vote against the government, they would have to cross the floor, I'm pretty sure. Shane, appreciate your insight. Thank you. You're calling in from Dawson Creek. Yeah, I heard they're having a bit of a crime wave up in Dawson Creek, as we are all across Canada. Send Jagmeet over to negotiate. Well, I'm assuming that has to do with India. Yeah, he's not. He's been denied a visa. He can't go to India. General duty. Duty tax. Yeah. Again, thanks, Brad, for earlier. Digger D, I can be a racist. Pretty good at it. Okay. I wouldn't admit to that, but yeah. Zawatlik. I'm sorry, I'm really butchering your name here. From Langford, just up the road from Langford as well. Yeah, Digger, Indian news is pretty funny, especially when they talk about Trudeau. Yes, and yeah, so Thomas Gordon, we mentioned that assault rifles were banned in 1970s, and the definition of assault ban is basically not what the Liberals are leading people to believe. Yeah, so Tracy, yeah, so what an assault rifle is, we talked about this. It's not an AR-15. It's basically usually a carbine, which means a short rifle that can be discharged in fully automatic. So one depression of the trigger, multiple cartridges are discharged. People are right to defend themselves. Yes, we do. But, self-defense is a reverse onus, so you will have to prove it, that it was self-defense. Tracy, carry a corkscrew bottle opener. Yeah, because you always need to be able to open that wine, right? But yeah, it does come in handy for other purposes. Just don't tell anybody that you're carrying it for defense, because even though it's defensive, a lot of people are under the false assumption that that is now a weapon dangerous to the public. So I don't agree with the law in that respect, but it is what it is. Jennifer says that life begins at conception is what us Christians believe because it is in the Bible. I believe that true. I believe that as well. And I know a lot of people who would, come down on me hard for that. But look, the abortion issue is not an issue in the next election. The Liberals are just trying to make it so. And it's disgusting that they keep bringing that up and that they keep on painting people who have a different belief than they have. They keep on painting them as radicals. It's just not right. Going down here, skipping ahead. Crazyville, Ottawa. Digger is from Crazyville. I think that you should actually start a petition to change the name of Ottawa to Crazyville. If you were still in the force, would you investigate SDTC even if your superior informed, frowned upon it and ordered you to stop? Well, yeah, so I was never in Ottawa, so I would never be associated to that file. If evidence came to me on anything where there was a criminal act, then I would investigate it. And I wouldn't be happy if somebody tried to take me off of it. There are certain things that they can order you to do and certain things they can't. If the order is unlawful, you can refuse it. The only problem is if it's judged later that it wasn't unlawful, you're in trouble, and you can face disciplinary action. But I would think that personally, I would think that it's a complicated matter, and it may be being investigated, and we wouldn't necessarily know about it. The RCMP doesn't normally comment on ongoing investigations, and to get a search warrant in that case, if they do believe that they need one, but I did a video on this, why I don't think they need one. But if they did need a search warrant, or they thought they needed a search warrant, it's not a simple search warrant. There are thousands of documents, and the question is going to be, how many search warrants do they need? How are they going to write it? Who are they going to hire to write it? Or not hire to write it, but assign to write it, because the affiant has to have, and especially in a case like this, they have to have a lot of experience. I've written a lot of search warrants, probably nothing as complicated as this would be. It may not be as complicated as I think, just off the top of my head, but you never know. They'll probably get a lawyer to write it, because they do have some lawyers in the RCMP, or they would get somebody from the Department of Justice. But it would be, they wouldn't really talk about it until such time as it was ready to go, because they just can't. They don't normally talk about ongoing investigations. I'm just going back here, I saw something. Bobcat. Talked about MAID. I'm totally against. I shouldn't say totally against MAID. I just think that it's immoral the way it's being used. Absolutely immoral the way it's being used. And I did a video on this. So how they can justify killing people the way they do, and for the reasons they do. I understand if you're already to the point where you're suffering or whatever, and you can consent to it. Okay, fine. That's not how they're using it, and I really think it's immoral the way they're using it. James Weist, was I ever stationed in Indian Head, Saskatchewan? I've been to Indian Head, Saskatchewan. I have family in Maidstone. I think it was Indian Head. Maybe it was Indian Point I've been to. But I've been to one of those places. I was never posted in Saskatchewan. So, but I've been there quite a bit because of family. Liz, from Alberta, former BCN, Mr. Province, but hate the NDP. Yeah, I'm right there with you. Hi from North Eddles. Hi from the North Eddles. D-drugs. Okay. So Bobcat saying the NDP, Needles, Drugs, and Poverty Party. And you're signing in from West Kootenay area, it looks like. I like that area. Been meaning to get down there to do some hunting, but I'm not a very good hunter. I didn't even buy a license this year. I should though, because actually access deer, you don't need a tag for. You just need your license, and you just need a place to go and hunt them. And I really haven't looked up or gone out exploring too much since I've been on the island, because I've been busy building the house or renovating the house. So difference between a veteran military and a cop is one is more direct. I don't know. So there's a lot of us ex-Mounties who are now experiencing the freedom of being able to speak our minds, which we weren't allowed to do when we were in the force. So, do you think we have a syndicate operating in Ottawa? A syndicate? Well, there's all sorts of little cabals out there. As far as the political cabal, the people who are really running the things behind the scenes, I think every government has a bit of a deep state these days, and I think we're seeing more and more of it because of the internet and because of YouTube and podcasters who are talking more about it and doing a little bit more research. And we're just seeing more, and we're realizing more, because we see what the WEF and we see what the UN and the EU and all of these groups are doing, and how they're kind of meddling in everybody else's business. So we see that a little bit more. So Mariah's a chick. I see you all the time on here. I always mess up your name. I'm really sorry about that. There are zero checks and balances. I saw a posting from a young man that said he cannot wait to maid out after turning 18. Why would anybody be like that? I mean, that person needs help, and it absolutely is not to do with a medical condition that they're not going to recover from. So yeah, that's crazy. Crazy. I think I'm going to be blunt, mafia. There's traditional organized crime everywhere. The traditional organized crime, mafia, La Cosa Nostra, that's the Italian mafia. They do exist in Canada and everywhere, but organized crime goes beyond that. The outlaw motorcycle gangs are probably the biggest, but they also have different other crime cartels out there. Right now, the drug cartels being run a lot by foreign states even are a big deal. So it does not matter at all. Please do not worry. Thank you very much. Maybe I'll just call you Chick from now on, M Chick. There's little to no mental help for young people. That's the problem. I mean, we can solve a lot of the issues in Canada if we just had better mental health, I guess, support. But a lot of it comes down to nutrition. I've been checking out a lot of what Robert Kennedy Jr. has been saying. It's amazing what a lot of the stuff makes sense. Also, there's a doctor, I think it's Begg. Is it Begg? Eric Begg, that I follow on YouTube. He has a lot of really good stuff out there when it comes, and he's an actual physician. He's an MD, not a PhD, but yet he does cover a lot of nutrition, which is very rare. Anyway, thanks for Chick. It is. Thanks for tuning in. I'm going to call it here because I've been, it looks like it's been almost over an hour and 10 minutes. So that's pretty long. Yeah, Eric Berg. Yeah, I think that's who he is. If you haven't seen Eric Berg, check out his stuff. You know, I don't, you know, I'm not really for taking a whole lot of stuff like supplements or whatever, but he does have a lot of information on diet, on the carnivore diet, which I tried. It's not for me. I'm more of a keto guy. I need my vegetables as well. But thanks for tuning in, everybody. And yeah, I'll see y'all next week.